Welcome to Turkistan TV News. Bilateral engagement with China has failed. Inside Sources News. Despite decades of broken promises and outright lies from China, much of America's political elite continue to believe that bilateral engagement with Beijing will somehow, eventually yield a positive outcome. But in reality, Beijing perennially uses diplomatic talks to simply delay any United States action. And so, enough is enough. It's time for Washington to act. United States Trade Representative Catherine Tai just drew a similar conclusion in the report to Congress, explaining that the rules of the World Trade Organization, WTO, cannot effectively discipline many of the China's most harmful policies and practices. Tai believes this is because China has not moved to embrace the market-oriented principles on which the WTO and its rules are based. Her dismissal of the WTO's effectiveness, coming after the similar concerns from the Trump administration, shows that neither party in Washington trusts the Geneva-based organization. Concerns over China are also heightened now that Beijing has failed to meet the terms of Phase 1 agreement negotiated by the Trump administration. The 2020 agreement had halted further implementation of Section 301 tariffs, intended to address China's state-sponsored intellectual property theft. In exchange for a pause in the tariffs, Beijing has agreed to increase its purchases of United States exports. Essentially, Beijing reneged on buying roughly $200 billion worth of United States exports. And that gave Beijing the better end of the deal since the Phase 1 agreement had forestalled tariffs on $300 billion worth of China's exports. The collapse of Phase 1 is simply one more policy failure going back more than 20 years, to the Clinton administration's original push for China's entry into the WTO. In the year of 2000, President Bill Clinton has promised that China would soon be lowering the barriers that protect state-owned industries, but that never happened. Instead, Beijing embarked on a massive program of state capitalism that continually funnels billions of dollars in subsidies to state-owned enterprises. The Chinese government also loans money to state-owned companies with no real expectation of repayment. The Chinese steel industry, for example, now owes at least $484 billion in outstanding loans that will never be repaid. Beijing also continues to impose onerous market barriers, including forced technology transfers that cost United States companies more than $350 billion annually. Chinese companies have also stolen some of America's most advanced proprietary technologies. It's estimated that 20% of China's wind turbine contains stolen United States software. This is simply business as usual for Beijing, what a federal investigation revealed in 2018 as China's ongoing efforts to steal key United States assets. Such amoral tactics are standard policy for Beijing's aggressive, authoritarian regime. And that includes forced labor from more than 1 million Uyghurs and other Turkic ethnic groups that have been disappeared into the vast network of re-education camps in East Turkestan, so-called China's Xinjiang. It's estimated that at least 80,000 Uyghurs have been transferred to slave labor in factories throughout China. China's industrial rise has also come on the back of the planet alerting environmental practices, such as the massive brown cloud of soot and debris that drifts east from the mainland China each year. Additionally, factories in China emit roughly 20,000 tons of ozone-depleting carbon tetrachloride annually, in violation of international agreement. For the United States, the conclusion should be obvious. Bilateral engagement with China has failed, particularly when Beijing has now insulted President Joe Biden by failing to honor its Phase 1 commitments. Because the WTO is toothless and bilateral engagement doesn't work, the Biden administration must now respond forcefully. Since China has breached the Phase 1 agreement, the United States is no longer obligated to delay its Section 301 tariffs. Biden should immediately impose the List 4 tariffs planned before the agreement was reached. Congress should also pass the America Competes Act. The legislation would reform some of America's tariff programs, while also closing import loopholes and strengthening both anti-dumping and countervailing duties. Washington must finally grasp the full extent of China's win-at-all-costs strategy and respond while there is still time. Neither bilateral consultations nor the WTO can provide a level playing field. In order to correct the mistakes of past 20 years, the United States must finally hit back, rather than tolerate China's ongoing, abusive behavior. Ultaber from Turkistan TV News reported.